After months of us wondering how Roy got a shiny Lucario, access to Mega Evolution, and met Ult, episode Mega Evolution, a special mini-arc, arrives to finally answer these questions. The result is a decent short story told across 3 episodes that has just enough charm, flair, and heart to be enjoyable, but fails to be anything truly memorable due to it being mostly unremarkable and lacking substance in certain areas. This was a good chance for us to learn more about Ult. After all, he's been around for over 20 episodes at this point, yet we know basically nothing about him. Now yes, this mini-arc wasn't supposed to be an Ult origin story, but given that it does show us glimpses of his past and that it takes place in his hometown and region, there was definitely a lot more that could have been revealed about his past. And what little we do get only leaves us with more questions. For example, he was clearly homeless at some point, but we don't know why. Did he run away from home? Was he abandoned? Did something happen to his home and or family? We know he has a father, but no additional information about him is revealed. Like, where is he? Where did he go? Why was his son left to fend for himself without a roof over his head? There has to be a reason for this. There must be some interesting backstory behind such an unfortunate and unexpected turn of events. But this mini-arc doesn't explore this at all. Instead, it only makes us assume that such a backstory and reason do exist, and that they will hopefully and presumably be revealed someday. The same applies to his relationship with Sableye, who was also homeless. They even lived together. There's a very brief flashback that implies they helped each other survive, which is how they became friends, but that's all it is, an implication. We don't see exactly how they met, why they bonded, or what made them decide to stick together. As a result, they don't feel like a trainer and his longtime partner. They feel like recent friends. This is most obvious when Ult battles Roy. He doesn't simply lose, he gets absolutely demolished. Not just because Roy is stronger, but also because Ult doesn't trust Sableye and clearly doesn't know how to battle with it properly. This is why they don't even land a single hit, compounding the humiliation. And when Sableye is defeated, Ult doesn't immediately withdraw it. Instead, he tries to send out his other Pokemon, aka Dragonite. It's almost as if Sableye doesn't have a Pokeball to be withdrawn into, because Ult hasn't captured it yet. Now, to be fair, I understand what they were going for. A big part of this mini-arc is Ult learning to trust Sableye and treat it like a partner instead of just a tool for him to be the strongest. This is his one moment of character development across these 3 episodes. It is what ultimately allows him to get through the traps in the castle the second time around, actually contribute in the final 2 battles, and achieve Mega Evolution. This last one being, of course, the whole point of this mini-arc. The problem is that this lesson would have been far more powerful if their bond had actually felt real to begin with. They didn't need to be the best partners right out of the box. There just had to be something, some sort of meaningful connection for them to build upon. We've seen how every other main character in Horizons met their first Pokemon and how their partnerships formed. We know their bonds. We understand why they matter. Ult is the only exception, and this was the perfect chance to finally give him that foundation. But again, the backstory is implied rather than explored. Moreover, these 3 episodes take place a year before the present day story, and Ult is basically the exact same character. Loud, obnoxious, he talks big, pretending he's the best, only to get completely destroyed and become dead weight when it actually matters, at which point he realizes his failures and gets frustrated as a result, wondering how he can improve. This is a problem because it means that this mini-arc actually undercuts episode 111, where Ult realized that he wasn't good enough. He held everyone else back, and so he needs to improve. If a year of traveling didn't change him, if this didn't make him grow, why should we believe that he's suddenly going to do so now by going to Blueberry Academy? This mini-arc doesn't reassure us that he will improve. If anything, it makes that feel less likely. As if all of this wasn't enough, even his motivation for wanting to catch Rayquaza doesn't help his case. We finally get context regarding why he decided to make this his goal, which is good, but the reasoning itself is, just like I feared back when he made his debut, selfish. It doesn't come across as a noble ambition or friendly competition. It feels more like him seeing Roy's dream and trying to hijack it just to one-up him. The explanation gives us clarity, but it doesn't make Ult any more likable or relatable. So honestly, this mini-arc doesn't do him any favors. Well, except one. Him picking up trash appears at first to just be a way for him to make ends meet. But when you connect it to episode 106, this suddenly becomes very telling. What once looked like pointless hoarding and was later revealed to be him gathering souvenirs of his journey is surprisingly given an origin story. What started as a job became a hobby. A need to survive became a need to remember. And the fact that Sableye does the same thing is one of the few moments where this mini-arc actually links them in a meaningful way and adds depth to their relationship, which is great. I do, however, have to point out that using this quirk to explain why Sableye already had its own Mega Stone is just cheap. It's way too convenient that it just so happens that it found a Mega Stone, a Sable Knight specifically at that, while scavenging. This stretches believability to its limits. It just feels like lazy writing, and it's another example of choosing efficiency over substance. Now, the other major focus of this arc is of course Roy and Lucario. We finally learn how and where they met and why Lucario chose him. Unfortunately, just like Ult and Sableye, this part of the story ends up feeling undercooked. The biggest issue is that there's no meaningful bond-forming process between Roy and Lucario. Catching a shiny Lucario is a huge deal. Any Pokemon joining the main cast, especially one as iconic and powerful as Lucario, a shiny one at that, deserves big narrative moments. There should be a sense of buildup, of connection forming, of mutual interest turning into trust. That's kind of the whole point of a trainer and Pokemon relationship. But Lucario barely feels present across these 3 episodes. In episode 112, Lucario only appears at the end. Roy and Ult face it in a battle that is over almost immediately, where they get destroyed, forcing them to realize that Mega Evolution is out of their reach for now. Narratively, it works, but in terms of Roy and Lucario's relationship, it does nothing. They don't talk, they don't interact, they don't bond. They just fight and it's over. In episode 113, Lucario is almost entirely absent. It only appears 3 times briefly. once at the end to lead them into the castle, and twice on rooftops like Batman watching Roy and Ult. Now yes, Lucario is clearly paying close attention to Roy and Crocalor, and it's obvious that what catches its eye isn't Roy alone, but also the bond he has with Crocalor. They battle as one, they move together, they trust each other. Their bond feels established and real. Ult and Sableye by comparison feel disconnected, hence why Lucario doesn't focus on them. This part works. The contrast is very deliberate. It serves the story, it makes sense, and it reveals that Lucario is interested in Roy and why. The problem is that this build-up is extremely brief. Across 2 episodes, Lucario's total screen time is maybe 3 minutes, and that's me being generous. By the time we reach episode 114, Lucario has spent more time watching Roy than actually being or interacting with him. Thankfully, the final battle is the best moment for Roy and Lucario, and it's also the only reason why their relationship ends up feeling even remotely acceptable. Roy reaches a point with Crocalor where their bond is so strong and their synchronization is so natural that Lucario can sense it. Their auras line up. They are fighting on the same wavelength, and Lucario responds to that. I just love this. Roy doesn't achieve Mega Evolution with his own Pokemon because there is no Mega Crocalor like Roy and the Crocalor hilariously wanted. Since this option doesn't exist, Roy ends up triggering Mega Evolution with Lucario instead. This is a really cool concept. We've never seen a trainer Mega Evolve an opposing Pokemon before. It's a unique idea and it makes sense in context. Roy isn't forcing anything, he's just fighting honestly, in sync with his partner, and Lucario links into that connection and their bond. This works incredibly well. It's powerful, cool, and it explains why Lucario ultimately chooses Roy. But it doesn't fix that the process of getting to this point needed more time. Lucario goes from adversary to distant observer and admirer to Roy's partner in the span of 3 episodes with very little direct interaction between them. The payoff itself is good, but the build-up isn't nearly strong enough to support it. Lucario feels more like a side character that suddenly steps into the spotlight rather than a Pokemon whose relationship with Roy was meaningfully developed. This is especially noticeable when you compare it to past examples, namely Ash and his Lucario. Now yes, they had dozens of episodes to fully develop their bond. But the issue here isn't scale, it's intent. Even within 3 episodes, there could and should have been more shared moments, more interaction, more personality coming through. This mini-arc does do one important thing right though, and that's retroactively explaining Roy's aura sensitivity. When Roy first showed up post-time skip and was suddenly syncing with Lucario's aura, it felt a little too close to Ash and his Lucario. The comparison was inevitable and honestly, it didn't feel great at the time. It felt like the show was borrowing something that worked before without earning it. This mini-arc at least gives us some grounding for this ability. We see that Roy has a natural sensitivity to aura, and that his bond with Crocalor is what allows him to tap into it. This isn't something new that appeared out of nowhere. We've already seen Roy and Crocalor sync up before, especially when they sing. This arc just reframes that connection and explains how it can extend to another Pokemon. This doesn't completely erase comparisons to Ash, but it does make Roy's ability feel less sudden and less like imitation. Also, I love how Lucario adorably basically begs Roy to catch it. Clearly, it really wanted a trainer it could aura bond and mega evolve with. Now, of course, there are other characters here besides Roy, Ult, and their Pokemon. Namely, Emma, Master Mayonnaise, and his two associates, Count Oyster and Shoyu. Honestly, this is one area where this mini arc excels, because these characters, especially Emma and Master Mayonnaise, end up leaving quite the impression. I have to admit that when I first saw Emma in the previews for this mini arc, I didn't recognize her at all. I genuinely thought she was a brand new character created for the anime, or someone from Pokemon Legends CA introduced early to promote the game. But it turns out she's actually a character from Pokemon X and Y who I simply forgot. This actually makes her appearance here better because it's long overdue. Like, I'm surprised she never showed up during the Ash era. Better late than never though, right? Considering that she does appear in Legends CA, her inclusion here makes sense. What I really like, however, is how her role in the anime mirrors her own past. In the games, Emma was homeless, and Lucario took her in. He taught her how to read and write and gave her a home. Ult was homeless just like she was, and she takes him in, gives him a home, and teaches him how to read and write. She does for Ult what Lucario did for her. She uses the kindness that once saved her to save someone else in the same way. This parallel is truly nice and heartwarming. It's one of the few moments where this mini arc quietly adds some emotional layers. Emma is also just incredibly easy to like. She's clumsy in an endearing way, she's warm, adorable, nurturing, and welcoming. She makes Roy feel at home immediately, and she even listens to his story without judgment. She also clearly cares deeply about Ult, even though they're not related. She is basically a big sister to him, which is incredibly wholesome. I especially love that when Ult is about to depart, she tells him he'll always have a home to return to, and that she places Roy's cap next to a photo they and Ult took together, which reinforces how much she values them. I also appreciate that we get to see Lucario in a picture and a reference to the detective spirit Emma inherited from him. At first, Master Mayonnaise comes across as incredibly suspicious. He looks and acts like a complete scam artist. He's on the street with a blanket laid out and a few megastones surrounded by a bunch of random rocks, calling people over like a shady street vendor promising secret knowledge. His outfit is bizarre, his behavior is over the top, and everything about him screams, "Do not trust this man." And yet, he turns out to be the exact opposite. Yes, he's still wacky, loud, and ridiculous, but he's also genuinely knowledgeable. He understands Mega Evolution, knows how to teach it, and actually takes Roy and Ult seriously as students. He gives them keystones, guides them through the process, sets up challenges to test them, and watches their progress closely. What really makes him work as a character is that he knows when to drop the act. When Ult needs to be called out, Master Mayonnaise doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's stern, blunt, and brutally honest. He tells him exactly where he's lacking and makes it clear that Mega Evolution is beyond his reach as things stand. This shift from goofy mentor to serious teacher lands surprisingly well. He's hilarious, but still someone that commands respect. Honestly, he ends up being one of the most memorable anime original characters in a while. From his design, which hilariously actually makes him look like a sentient giant bottle of mayonnaise, to his exaggerated personality, to the fact that he actually fulfills a functional role in the story, everything about him is fun, unique, and works. Count Oyster and Shoyu, on the other hand, are much lighter characters. They only appear briefly to test Roy and Ult further through a double battle. They exist to reinforce the idea of teamwork, to further push Ult towards trusting Sableye, and to serve as one final obstacle before the Lucario rematch. After that, they reappear only to reveal that, surprise, not really, they were working with Master Mayonnaise all along. They're not meant to be deep or memorable, and that's fine. They're just goofy, exaggerated characters meant to complement Master Mayonnaise. They add flavor, not substance, and they do their job without overstaying their welcome. One detail I really love is that Master Mayonnaise also works at the shop Roy buys his jacket from. This is a fun little Easter egg that humanizes him. Teaching Mega Evolution clearly isn't paying the bills, so he's got a day job. It's a small touch that sells the idea that these characters exist beyond just their roles in the story, and also ends up being meaningful because he's here watching his student take another step forward, his last in Lumiose City. The jacket almost feels like a farewell gift. Also, the Mega Evolution hat is a nice touch. Now, as always, we must talk about battles. Unsurprisingly, they end up being a mixed bag. Across these 3 episodes, we get 4 battles in total, and they pretty much encapsulate everything good and bad about battles post Mega Voltage. There's really not much to say about Roy and Ult versus Lucario. Again, it's over immediately, so not much happens, and what little does happen is awful because, as is tradition, we get a bunch of still frames with speed lines to simulate motion. There's no real choreography, no sense of flow, and no standout animation. It's completely forgettable. Save for one moment of brilliance that is ultimately ruined because it ends in a still frame. Narratively, it does its job, yes, but as an action sequence, it's the weakest battle of the arc by far. Roy vs. Ult is a step up, but only slightly. There's more movement, a bit more runtime, and at least a few moments of actual animation rather than pure still frames. With one standout, Crocalor using Flame Charge to dash up a wall, across the air, down another wall, and into Sableye. This moment is fluid, has momentum, speed, and weight. Not to mention, it's just plain cool. It's far better than anything in the first Lucario battle. Still, the same old tricks are in full display here. Static shots, reused motions, and minimal impact keep it from being truly exciting. Like the previous battle, this one works as far as the story goes. In terms of spectacle though, it's just alright. The double battle against Count Oyster and the Shoyu is where quality finally steps up. This battle is longer, more involved, and more interesting conceptually. One of the things that really elevates it is strategy. Escavalier and Aselgor take turns covering for each other, switching between offense and defense, creating openings, blocking attacks, and forcing Roy and Ult to actually think and work together. When animation is lacking, good strategy can compensate, and that's exactly what happens here. However, this battle does have several genuinely well-animated moments. Aselgor cutting through Crocalor's flamethrower with water shuriken looks fantastic. The motion is clean, sharp, and it has real impact. There's also a great close-up where Excavalier nearly impales Crocalor, with the camera zooming in and tilting upward to sell the imminent danger before Crocalor dodges at the last second. This kind of direction goes a long way towards elevating intensity. There's also a brief but excellent exchange where Crocalor fights both opponents at once, crashing into Excavalier's protect, rolling out of the way, and darting around the battlefield, attacking and dodging attacks. It's fast, dynamic, and exciting. It doesn't last long, and it's partially framed from a distance, which likely helps the animation look cleaner, but it's still one of the best action sequences in this arc. Overall, this is the second best battle. It's tense, creative, and visually engaging enough to stand out. The final battle features the familiar highs and lows. There is once again an over-reliance on still frames, with motion streaks which, as always, is difficult to ignore. It saps away energy from the action and makes any exchanges feel static and weightless. Thankfully though, this battle eventually peaks. Sableye's Mega Evolution is beautifully animated, and Mega Sableye, using Phantom Force immediately after, is one of the cleanest sequences in the battle, with strong camera tracking, clear motion, and a solid impact. The best part of the battle by far though comes when Crocalor gets serious. This is where the animation team clearly decided to lock in. Crocalor and Lucario engage in a one-on-one exchange that's fast, dynamic, and genuinely exciting. They attack, dodge, reposition, and clash in rapid succession. The camera follows the movement smoothly, the choreography is clear, and for a brief moment, everything just clicks. It's exactly the kind of post-pounding action that I love and makes Pokémon battles great. Sadly, it doesn't last long, but I'll take 10 seconds of high-quality animation over dozens of still frames any day. The final clash caps the battle off perfectly. The explosion, the scale, the spectacle, it all lands. It's a strong visual payoff and a satisfying way to end the battle. Roy terastalizing Crocalor would have made it even better though. One of the more awkward aspects of this mini-arc is how it doesn't account for airing out of chronological order. It takes place before several major events we've already seen, which means a lot of what it shows us lacks weight by default. We already know Roy is going to get Lucario, he and Ult will get Mega Evolution, and they're going to travel together. So there's no question about what will happen, only how it happens, and that inherently dulls the stakes. This becomes especially noticeable in moments that feel like they are meant to tease future developments but don't actually land because the reveal already happened. Ult showing Roy the Dusk Ball is a good example. It's framed as a mystery, this powerful Pokemon waiting to be released someday. But by the time this arc aired, we already knew what was inside. Chronologically, the scene makes sense. Narratively, it doesn't add much. It feels redundant rather than intriguing. The same applies to Roy explaining to Emma how and why the Rising Boat Tacklers disbanded. Again, this is something the characters would talk about in this moment, but as viewers, we're just being told information we already know. It's context we don't need. This is the unavoidable downside of telling a prequel after the fact. We've already seen where everything leads, so a lot of impact and value is lost, and this arc doesn't really compensate for this with deeper character exploration, which makes several moments feel like filler rather than enrichment. That said, there is one future-facing moment that genuinely works. Roy buying a jacket like the one Freed had. From the moment Roy appeared post-time skip, the visual parallels were obvious. And as Mega Voltage progressed, it became increasingly clear that Roy was stepping into a similar role, not as a replacement but as someone inheriting the same spirit. This mini-arc reinforces this. We see this was a conscious choice rather than a coincidence. In this moment, he literally takes on Freed's mantle. This works because it connects directly to what we already know about Roy's future, while still adding meaning to what happens in this mini-arc. Finally, the true purpose of this mini-arc is of course to celebrate and promote Pokémon Legends CA. And it accomplishes this lightly. It's set in Lumiose City, and the Mega Evolution is front and center, including a completely inconsequential battle and Emma Mega Evolving her Ampharos just to restore power, something that absolutely did not require Mega Evolution. But other than these two details and Emma herself, these 3 episodes don't integrate Legend CA deeply into the proceedings, allowing them to exist mainly as a side story focused on Roy and Ult that also happens to advertise the launch of a new game. Which is great since it means this isn't just a cheap and blatant promotion with no soul behind it. So overall, this mini-arc, these 3 episodes, is/are ultimately a mixed bag. On one hand, there's plenty here that is entertaining, cool, and enjoyable. Some of the battles are genuinely fun and exciting to watch, with several amazing moments. I really like where Roy and Lucario end up. The payoff and concept both work. The supporting characters, specifically Emma and Master Mayonnaise, are fantastic and surprisingly memorable. And we do get answers to the core questions this arc needed to address. On the other hand though, they dropped the Pokeball several times. There was a real opportunity here to add meaningful layers to Ult as a character, to make him more likable, more relatable, or at the very least, more understandable. Instead, we only get hints at an interesting backstory without exploring it. Many of his worst traits were reinforced, and he ultimately ends up in almost the exact same place he was before. This arc completely failed to redeem or improve him. Roy and Lucario fare better, yes, but the build-up didn't fully match the payoff. While it works and the idea behind their bond is solid, their relationship itself needed more time and more interaction to feel fully earned. Lucario ends up feeling more like a late-game reward rather than a properly developed partner. I still don't feel Roy deserved it or that Lucario is truly part of the team. The battles, while good for the most part, still have plenty of issues. And then there's the prequel problem. Because this arc airs out of chronological order, a lot of its potential tension simply doesn't exist. That's the nature of prequels, but this arc doesn't do quite enough to overcome this limitation through character work or thematic depth. That said, airing between two larger, heavier arcs actually works in its favor. It feels like a breather, a side quest after finishing a major chapter and before starting the next one. It's lighter and less demanding, which makes it easier to enjoy for what it is rather than what it could have been. All in all, I liked it more than I disliked it. It was mostly good, even great at times, but it was also bad at times, though never awful. It did what it had to do well enough, but not remarkably. If you enjoyed this video and wanted to see more like it, feel free to click the links on screen. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me keep making content like this, you can find all the ways to do so in the description and in the pinned comment. Whether it's through a small donation or just watching and sharing, every bit of support means the world to me. Thank you so very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.